We're going to take notes on section 4 of chapter 3, which is solving equations using multiplication and division. So please write this in your notebook. If you need to press pause to write the notes, please press pause. When you're ready to move on, just press play. So we're going to solve equations using multiplication and division. So remember, the goal of the whole activity is to get your variable. You want your variable all alone. So that's the goal. We want our variable to equal something. So I'm going to have you write down these key ideas. So now would be a great time to pause the video, write all this information down, and then hit play when you have it all written down. By now you should have all this written down. So the multiplication property of equality says that when you multiply each side of an equation by the same number, you have an equivalent equation. So we all know 5 equals 5. That's going to be the same as 4 times 5 equals 4 times 5. So yes, we know 20 equals 20. So remember, you can't play favorites. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. The same is true of the division property. When you divide each side of an equation by the same number, you have an equivalent equation. 20 equals 20 is equivalent to, it's not the same as, but it is equivalent to 20 divided by 5, which is 4 equals 4. So make sure that's all in your notes. So now we're going to use those properties to help us solve. So again, write this down in your notebook. Example 1, solve using multiplication or division. So again, if you need to pause the video, pause the video. So let's look at question A. So A says I have c over 8 equals negative 7. So I kind of want to look at what is the opposite of divided by 8. So how can I get c all by itself? So I have c divided by 8 equals negative 7. So I need to somehow get rid of this negative 8 to make it go away. Well, how do I get rid of a negative 8? 1 over 8. Well, if I multiply each side times 8, those will cross cancel. So now I'm left with c equals negative 7 times 8, which is negative 56. So you're trying to do the opposite of what you see to get the letter, the variable, all by itself. So make sure that's in your notes. So please write down example 1b, which is negative 5p equals negative 32. So now I have negative 5 times p equals negative 32. So remember, the goal is to get p all by itself. So I will have to divide by a negative 5. And notice my 5's cross cancel. If you want to draw the line like we have been, showing that you're keeping everything equal on both sides of your equal sign. So now I have p equals, oh gosh, what is negative 32 divided by 5? I don't think that's a whole number, so I think it's 6 2/5. Now, is it a negative or a positive? Well, I have a negative divided by the negative, which is saying what's the opposite of a negative, which is positive. So my final answer should be a positive 6 2/5. So notice the difference between these two problems. This started out, A started out as c divided by 8. This one started as 5 times p. You do the opposite of what you see. So this was divided by, so I multiply. This side was already multiply, so I'm going to divide. So we're going to do a couple more practice problems. So you're going to do each of these problems in your notebook, and then you're going to write the answer in the text box on your right. So solve them completely, showing all of your work in your notebook, and then give me answers for 1, 2, and 3 in the text box on the right. You might need to pause the video at this point in time, solve those, and then move on. Now I want you to check your answers. So your answers should be negative 10, 24, and x equals negative 2. So on the first one, it was x divided by 5. So the opposite would be to multiply times 5. So I'm going to multiply both sides times 5. My 5's cross cancel on the left, so I'm left with x equals negative 10. On the next one, this is negative x equals negative 24. Well, you could pretend there's a 1 there. So you could say negative 1x equals negative 24. So now I'm going to divide by a negative 1 on both sides. And again, a negative divided by a negative is positive, and that's how I got positive 24. Now the last one, you have 3 equals 1.5 times x. So the opposite of times is to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides times 1.5. 3 divided by 1.5 equals 2. I forgot the negative, so I'm going to put the double check. Okay, so now I have a negative, so my answer is negative 2. So make sure when you're done, you're checking all those things. The negatives, does it make sense? So check your answers, and I should see you marking them correct or marking them wrong in your notebook. And if you need to correct, you need to make a correction on the side. We're just going to take a few more notes. So example 2, using a reciprocal. So write this in your notebook. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. If you have a question on the way, write the question on the side so we can go over it tomorrow during class. So a reciprocal is an inverse. So what's the inverse or reciprocal of negative 7 over 8? Well, I'm just going to flip them. I'm going to invert them. So it's negative 8 over 7. So that's what they mean by an inverse. So now I want to solve. This problem's a little bit more complicated. So I want to use the inverse. This is 5/9 times m. So I have negative 5/9 m. So I need to divide. So I want to divide by the reciprocal. Remember, I want this to cross cancel so that it's m all by itself. So I'm going to put it 9 on top and a negative 5 on the bottom to get rid of those. So whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And I probably should have made that a color. So let's see. We'll make it some orange. So whatever I do to one side, I have to do exactly the same to the other side. And I can cross cancel. And then my answer, m equals negative 45, which makes sense. If I plug that back into my original, a negative times a negative should make a positive answer. So make sure that's all in your notebook. Okay, now you have 3 more to do on your own. So pause the video, go ahead and solve these, put the answer in the text box on the right, and then I will go over the answers with you. Okay, so here are my answers. So in this first one, I used the reciprocal of 2 over 3, which is 3 over 2, so that they cross. So I want to do the same thing on this side, times 3 over 2. I'm going to cross cancel my 2 and my 14 and make it a negative 7. So negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. So check that answer in your notebook. Let's move on to 5. So I need to multiply times the reciprocal of negative 8 over 5, which is negative 5 over 8. Again, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So the left side cross cancels. This side, though, I'm left with negative 25 over 8. That's an improper fraction. Put that as a mixed number. And you should get negative 3 1/8. All right, last one. So we have 3 over 8. I want the reciprocal. Remember, I'm always looking to see where the variable is. I just want to get rid of anything with that variable. So I'm going to do 8 over 3 to make sure they cross cancel. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I can simplify then that 3 and the negative 9. So I get negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. So go ahead and correct those. If you have a question, go ahead and write a question on the side of the paper, and then we can go over that tomorrow during class. All right, everybody's favorite, a word problem. So I do want you to copy this into your notebook. I want you to copy the whole thing into your notebook. I'm going to look for that tomorrow when I return to class. So the record low temperature in Wisconsin is 1.2 times that of California. So the record low temperature in California is 45 degrees. What is the record low temperature in Wisconsin? Okay, so gosh, what am I going to do? So Wisconsin is 1.2 times that of California. We're that much colder. So what should I do? Why don't you guys talk about or think about that for a second? Okay, so California is 1.2 times that of Wisconsin. Okay, so now what should I do? Okay, the record low temperature in California is 45 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to make it oh, that's what I couldn't see. Couldn't see the negative 45 over here. So, sorry about that, negative 45. So if I take that 45 times 1.2, I see the record low temperature in Wisconsin is negative 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And I've got to say that's not the coldest it's ever been, but it's pretty darn cold. Okay, you're going to copy this one into your notebook. This is on your own. So the record low temperature in Hawaii is negative 0.5 times, the record temperature of Alaska. The record low temperature in Alaska is 12. What is the record low temperature in Hawaii? What is it in Alaska? So go ahead and try, and realistically, you should know that Alaska is going to be pretty darn cold compared to Hawaii. So go ahead and put your answer in the text box on the right. All right, so this is how I solved it. Hawaii, hold on. I forgot to, sorry. So Hawaii is negative 0.15 that of Alaska. Hawaii is 12, so what's Alaska? Alaska is negative 80 Fahrenheit. Now that's cold. All right, so now that you're done with the notes, you can go ahead and start your homework. So this is your homework for tonight. So write that in your planner and go ahead and get started. If you need help, I will be here this afternoon, so I will help you during study hall if you want to come on over, or I can help you tomorrow morning before school.